Welcome to Deep Tech Marketing Interviews. My name's Ollie, and today we'll be speaking to Yitzi Tannenbaum, who's the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Palo Alto Networks. In this episode, we'll be speaking about the different types of product marketing managers that exist out there in the world, how they vary from startups to large enterprises, and more. Enjoy. Yitzi, thanks so much for joining me today. It's really lovely to have you on the show. Before we begin, it'd be great to get a little bit of an overview of who you are and what you do at Palo Alto Networks.
Yeah. Hi, Oliver. Thanks for having me. How do I sum up myself in a couple of sentences? I would say, so my name is Yitzy, originally from New York, currently in Tel Aviv. I am a senior product marketing manager at Palo Alto Networks. I look after the Cortex product line. I've been doing product marketing probably close to 10 years, both at smaller startups and at larger big companies like Facebook/Meta, IBM. So I've kind of seen both the large enterprise and the small, scrappy startups. Doing product marketing since, I like to say, since before it was cool. Was super happy.
When was it not
here.
cool, you'd see?
So when I started out with product marketing, I would say, oh, I'm a product marketer. People would say, oh, how's product management like? And I would be like, wait, that's not what I said. I said something else. It just wasn't a thing. I think the role existed, but it was called something different. I think in recent years, maybe 5 years, it started becoming a must in every company, B2B, B2C, no matter the size. It's pretty standard at this point.
Okay. I mean, this is probably similar to the question of what is a product manager, but in your view, what is a product marketer?
Okay. So the place that I think it started is take maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The way tech used to work is you used to have developers building the product and you used to have sales and marketing people selling the product.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I think came this idea of, wait a second, there's no one deciding what we're building, right? Who's making that decision? Is it the CEO? Is it the most senior developer?
Yeah.
So that's where I think product management kind of came to be.
Yeah.
Someone's job is just, okay, what are we building? What is the team working on today? And, product management work on roadmap and things along those lines. That kind of evolved, and you do see kind of outbound product managers, but I think the need for, if the product managers are very technical or very R&D and development focused, there came a need for more outbound product managers, and that's where I think product marketing came to be, which is essentially, in my mind, it's a lot about just how do I take a product, and sometimes a product is very technical. Let it be a super complex financial banking transaction or cybersecurity or some kind of niche. How do I take whatever the technical story is and bring it to market? So it's everything from understanding the market, understanding customers, understanding the prospects. Why are we winning? Why are we losing? Is there a product market fit? How do we improve the product market fit?
Yeah.
But then, and once you have that information, bring that additional context inward. A lot of times people think that product marketing only bring outwards or marketing facing, which they are. But I think there is bringing inward. And obviously, once the kind of product is built, how do you package it and tell a good story and just hit the person at the right time in the right language? So I think it's that bilateral way. What do you think, Oliver? Is that
I mean, I think one of the interesting things is I've not heard a consistent answer about how people think about product marketing. I think a lot of it comes from the point where you're talking about it's a bit of an evolution and a spin-off from product management. Because if you take a puritanical view of what product management ought to be, then aspects of product marketing ought to be folded into that. But over time, it's kind of spun out and become its own thing. But I'm interested in that. You've been working in this industry for a very long time. You must have seen evolutions of how different organizations think product marketing works. And I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, what has that journey been for you in terms of how the companies you've worked at, whether they've been small or whether they've been very big, how are they thinking about what product marketing is?
Yeah, that's a great question because I do think that every company does it slightly different.
Yeah.
I would break it up into a few different types of product marketing. I think B2C has a completely different product marketer.
Yeah.
They're a lot more focused um, on customer journey and understanding from the first interaction until buying and then buying again, customer journey, personas, and where do marketers and where does us as a company meet the customer throughout the journey.
Mm.
It's very close to like the world of digital marketing, demand generation,
Yeah.
understanding that world. I think that's the B2C type. The other might be a technical content creator,
Yeah.
right? If I'm a technical company, I can't just hire a content creator. I need someone with a really deep technical understanding.
Yeah.
So I may call that role product marketing. I could also call it, by the way, technical marketing, right? People have different names for that. I've seen that quite a bit. The other two permutations are, at least in my view, is larger companies or not even that, whatever the company size is, they're looking for a marketer for a specific product. So product marketing in the more literal sense, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. So you have like a whatever, your company has 4 products, you have a product marketing manager per product. And think of it as the CMO
Yeah.
of that product. So they're in charge of demand and content creation, PR, anything marketing for that product. So it's more product marketing in the literal sense
Yeah.
of product marketing. And then I think the final one and the most common one, and in my mind, the most kind of pure product marketing is really that kind of bridge between very technical product teams and more just go to market marketing and sales teams, sales enablement, things along those lines. And being that bridge, both, as we mentioned, taking the technical stuff and bringing it outwards, trying to tell a compelling story. But then I think the flip side, taking understanding the market, understanding the competition, understanding why we win and lose, and bringing it back to product.
Yeah.
So those
Because
are the core.
in your more true view of the sense of a product marketer, there are stronger aspects of what I would perceive as kind of traditional product management in terms of the people, facing the cold front of the actual users that they're trying to serve, understanding their needs, their challenges, their pain points, and then coming back and utilizing that to inform and develop new propositions and new ideas. You say that that's more of your view of what product marketers ought to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I like to see myself as the person within the product team that knows the most of the market,
Yeah.
but then the person in the marketing team who knows the most of the product.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah.
So when I come to the product team, I want to be the person in the room that's saying, hey, I understand why this is technically right, but is it providing the right value we need to our customers?
Mm.
Is this what our customers are looking for? Sometimes what the textbook product management will dictate is not necessarily what the customer needs. I think a lot of product managers are kind of thrown off by technology. If there's something very cool technically, AI, ML, they may be pulled to say, hey, let's do this. It sounds really cool. There's automation, there's all this stuff. Sometimes that's not sometimes the most complex thing technically is not what the customer is looking for. And I
Yeah,
think
sure. I mean, on one level, you could argue if somebody is operating in that way, they're not necessarily representing the best needs and requirements of the audiences they're supposed to be building products for. They're being driven by something different, which is, I guess, technological opportunity and knowing well. And to be honest, I see a lot of this in the market at the moment, where you see organizations looking to the left and right at what other companies are doing and thinking, well, I think I might like a little bit of that in our organization. What can we do to match what they're delivering and then deliver a little bit more? I'm interested. because you're working so closely with your users and effectively acting as the voice of the users in the development room and helping to shape those propositions to make sure they're actually going to solve those problems, what methods do you use to make sure that you're always in line and synchronized with the needs and challenges of the community you're serving?
That's a great question. And I think the main skill is humility. I
Okay.
think with creators, um, people building the product tend to think that they know it so well, right? They
Yeah.
know the industry, which they may, but I think it's important to really stop and think about and just like listen to your customers, listen to the day-to-day users. I think also, especially higher level people, I only want to talk to the C level or the VP.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of, yes, talking to the senior people, but talking to the people boots on the ground and seeing what are the features you speak to them and their eyes light up. I'm also a big fan of not doing it over the phone, preferably not even doing it over Zoom, doing it
Yeah.
face to face, looking them in the eye and seeing what are the features that I'm talking about and they just could not care less. And what are the features I'm talking about that just they light up
Yeah.
from. And I think just having those interactions and being willing to accept. I think a lot of times, especially if you've been in a company for a while, you're very set in your ways. These are the things that I'm most excited about.
Yeah.
I'm talking to customer number 50, number 100. I've heard everything before. He's wrong or she's wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's doing yourself a disservice. It's doing your product a disservice. So yeah, I think it's just listening, asking questions, being in the room, asking the hard questions, being willing to hear the things you're not willing, like the bad things and negative things. I think are important. You know, Looking at why you're losing. I think is something very helpful. Is doing win-loss analysis or even meeting with customers, prospects who were evaluating your product and with a competitor.
Yeah.
Ask them the questions. Why did you go with the competitor? Right? Why were you looking at the competitor? Why did you choose a competitor over us? What were the factors that influence that? I think that's the best way to really get an understanding of what your customers are looking for.
What are the kind of challenges you faced in terms of trying to be as humble as you're describing in your approach? Because from my perspective, I see a lot of kind of confirmation bias, people falling in love with their own products. And when you're in a room face to face with customers and telling you the thing you've built or the thing you want to build is a terrible idea, sometimes it's a really hard and bitter pill to swallow. So how do you combat that?
Yeah, a great question. And I think this actually ties into what we spoke about earlier about product marketing versus product management. I think a
Yeah.
product manager is so invested in what they built, it's very hard for them to take that step back and hear negative or constructive criticism. And I think me as a product marketer, I do have that kind of outside look. And I'm the
Yeah.
person in the meetings telling the product manager, hey, this is the feedback we're getting. It's not hitting the mark the way that you think it is. So I think maybe a big value in the role, if some of your listeners are looking or debating to to hire a
That,
product marketer, I think that outside view is really important. But on a personal level, when it comes to how do I ensure that I'm taking everything in. I think if you're if you're looking for it, if you have it in your mind that you're looking for the issues that you want to really understand, I think it takes a while to not be in your own head and to really
yeah.
bring that on. But uh, I think it's super important. If you're not willing to hear the negative, then that may be an issue.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I imagine a lot of it's in the culture you establish for yourself. So being in the discipline of always making sure you're talking to people outside the organization. And so you
Mm.
spoke a lot about wanting, where possible, to do face-to-face interactions, which is on one level is kind of non-trivial in terms of how you go about facilitating that. What's been your approach to kind of maintain the high quality face-to-face interactions over your kind of career in marketing?
Yeah. Look, industry events are by far walking the floor, just
Yeah.
bumping into. And I'm looking for like in additional to the C level, which I do, is I'm looking for those user level people, the people who are using it. They're tinkering with the toys on a daily basis. Those are the people I'm really looking for. We at Palo Alto Networks have something, in my opinion, that's amazing, is that we bring our customers to our offices. I think we have 5 locations that are meant for these customer interactions. We probably meet 200 customers in our offices for a full day of discussions, of asking questions, of us presenting to them, them presenting to us, of discussing where the product is going, sitting in those meetings, even as a fly on the wall. You learn so much from, where are they seeing ROI? Where are they seeing benefits? Where are they seeing value? What are they paying for that they don't see value or they haven't been able to crack? What are the challenges with adoption? All of those things I feel just getting in front of customers are super important. Listening to questions, going to meetups, just being out there. I think as a marketer, it's very easy to find yourself part of the marketing community. But I think I would also recommend, be part of the community that you're selling to. Are you selling to banks? Where do bankers hang out? Where do they network? Like, who are the people that you're looking for? Would be my recommendation.
Yeah, understanding who they are and then working out where they're going to be and effectively being there. One of the interesting things you were talking about is in regards to you were more likely to want to talk to the implementers than necessarily the quote unquote decision makers. I'm interested to get your perspective in terms of what the importance of all of those different roles are within an organization. Because personally, I've heard examples where some marketers are very over-indexed thinking about, well, we only really care about decision makers because ultimately they're the ones who are making the big decision as to whether or not they're going to adopt this new tool or service. And I've heard counter arguments where actually, no, it's all about the implementers. It's the people who are actually going to be on the ground putting this into practice. If they can't make it work, it's never going to fly. But what's your perspective on
that? That's a great question, Oliver. And you know what it reminds me of a debate with, like, when you're selling a toy, do you market to the parent or the kid? I think it's kind of and I don't think a good marketer shouldn't market to one or the other. If you're only targeting the end customer, you're doing it wrong. If you're only targeting the decision maker, you're also doing it wrong. Because at the end of the day, you want to have a product that really works and the user is happy to use it. But you also are looking for a product that is driving values, driving ROI, and that the decision maker is seeing the benefit as well. And I think one of the biggest challenges for a sales team is when you get into a room and you have both personas or multiple personas. How do you craft a story that really hits everyone in an equal way and shows benefit across the board? I don't know if how do you balance that? I think would have to deal with the persona, with how the company is structured, how involved is the executive in the day-to-day. And I think that's the real skill of a salesperson, is to be able to look at all their personas that are in the whole process, the buying process, and craft for themselves the story and the message. Me as a marketer, my role is to give the tools to the salespeople to be able to craft the right message that will fit right for the company. But if they're only focusing on one and completely neglecting the other, they are probably doing something wrong.
Sure. Okay. So I mean, on one level, you as an individual have a finite bandwidth. And presumably, when you're thinking about projects, you have a finite amount of resources you can spend in terms of investment in these different personas you've identified within the kind of the buying cycle. How do you go about determining how you allocate time and resource into different aspects of that? Is that a dynamic portfolio of resource allocation depending on the product? Or do you find that there are some uniformity around how you apply that to each of the products you're looking at?
Yeah. Prioritization is a great question, because I think many product marketers have to do a ton of prioritize. This is something I learned quite when I worked at Meta. I was a product marketer for a product used by 1.2 billion people.
No pressure.
Yeah, and I would start my morning with probably 100 things to do, and I have time for 4. So, like, where do you even start? So I think the ability to prioritize is super baked into my role. When it comes to allocating, again, it very much, I think, depends on your industry, on how the buying cycle happens. And this goes back to understanding your customers really, really well. Like, is this are you selling a product that the people on the ground kind of do all the decision making and the decision maker just signs off? Is this something that the decision maker will bring down to the people? I think there's, like, again, no right or wrong or one size fit all, even within a company. You could have 4 products. One product, just hits home a lot better with decision makers. Another product can be a lot more focused on the more hands-on people. Ideally, you should try to talk to both, because the messages will be different.
Yeah.
The people at the users, you want to explain, how are you making their lives easier? How are they happier in their job? The higher level, you want to talk about benefits for the company, ROI, things along those lines. And by the way, just if we kind of brought it up, in my mind, a good marketer is always thinking, how am I improving my customer's life, right?
Yeah.
Especially in B2B, we tend to sell to businesses, right? I'm selling to a business. I'm not selling to a person. The very end of the day, we're selling to an individual who has wants, who has needs. How am I improving their life? How are they happier with it?
Okay. How do you think about the different types of content marketing depending on who those audiences are? So when you've got a decision maker, let's say it's a chief data officer or a chief security officer, how do you think about the content needs and requirements for them versus the people who are effectively implementing those solutions? And he said it might be different stakeholders are key decision makers in completely different dynamics within the same organization. But are there common trends or themes that you see in terms of the type of content that works well for those audiences?
Right. That's a good question. In my mind, people have different approaches. Like, people like different types of content.
Yeah.
You have the person who likes to read a very long ebook or white paper. You have people who get all their information from blogs. You have the people who love listening to podcasts, and that's how they consume information. You have people who are on social media and just want to watch short form video. There are people who want to sit through a 45-minute webinar or YouTube video and learn it that way. I think a good marketing content strategy is building a very eclectic library of content types. If you're only producing one single type of content, even if that content is doing very well and producing very well, I don't think it's good enough. I think you want to mix it up. I think you want to, just create many different types of content, because you'll hit different people differently. Now, to answer your question, usually C-level people won't read or listen to very long pieces. They want it short. They're also very time constrained. They're looking for a one pager. From my experience, they tend to like the reading method more than the listening method or viewing method. But that's so not true, because, again, behind an executive is a person, and that person has so many different wants and needs. It's very hard for me to say one size fit all. I would recommend, for a company, look at your data. You've ran a webinar in the past. You've run 5 webinars. What are the conversion rates? How many of those turned into opportunities? How many of those turned into leads and qualified leads, MQLs, SQLs? Take that, compare it to your white paper, to your video, to all the different things, and see what has the best effect in your specific company. But even if you find that winning horse, I would still try to mix stuff up and create that mix of content just to get more. And I think marketing in general is, how do I create something that feels tailored to me? And every me is different. And I'm looking to create a story, a narrative, in a way that is best for each individual, and not like a collective, which some people may do.
Yeah. So presumably within that portfolio of different kind of content types, you've also got a portfolio of personas that you're appealing to as well. So do all of those content types uniformly align to the personas as well? Or, like he said before, like, C-level execs are going to more be inclined to read 3-4 page documents that give you high level bullet points of what the key benefits, advantages are. Whereas over here, you've got, say, somebody that's going to be implementing this. They're far more likely to want to read a longer ebook. And then in the middle, you might have somebody that wants the webinar or the podcast. Do you
Yeah.
think about content types in relation to personas, or would you advocate a broad range of content types for all of the personas?
Oh, yeah. You should definitely consider the persona when building the type. If you're creating a C-level piece of content, how is that translating to the type of content you're creating? That being said, again, I wouldn't put all my money on one horse. I would try to diversify, um, because you never know who you're meeting. And again, behind the executive is a person, and each person is individual. But yes, at the end of the day, what you mentioned, the higher level people tend to look for short. In
Yeah.
my experience, they look more for reading, although obviously kind of written words are shrinking, and more podcasts and videos are kind of growing. Um, so if you would have to push me to the wall and force me to make a choice, usually the more executive people are looking for short form. Think about a solution brief or one page or things along those lines. Um, People who are more hands-on may be looking for a webinar or a podcast or a kind of a customer event. But it's so one size doesn't fit all. So I even feel bad saying that. My recommendation would be to marketers who are listening in is to try to do a little of each. Also, I think it very much differs based on the company, and like who's your target audience. Maybe they act differently. So I really wouldn't listen to my advice or to Oliver's advice and
No. Well, your advice is principally talk to your customers, talk to your users, understand what they're. Because it also sounds like you're advocating having a portfolio of content offerings on one level for the purpose of understanding how people convert across those different products. And that in some ways will start to reveal where the preferences of your core users and your core customers are.
So understanding customers is definitely important, but actually I think when it comes to choosing the type of content, data is super important. Now, if your company has been around for a while, you've been trying different things, what works and what doesn't? You tried it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, either do it differently or stop doing it. If you're putting out a podcast, you're putting so much effort into it, and no one's listening, or a ton of people are listening, but they're students from a region that you don't care about. What you do here, right? So you got to use the data, look at the data, understand the data, analyze the data, and make data-driven decisions. I think that's a huge contributor to content.
Absolutely. I'm keen to understand from your perspective. I was going to say, from your perspective, what's I guess the one product marketing initiative you're probably most proud of across your career, very career?
I think you broke up for a second. My what that I'm most proud
of? The product marketing initiative or project you're most proud of across your career.
Oh, there's so many. I'm very fortunate. I'm a believer that I'm a big collaborator. So very few, if I did it on my own, I probably am not as happy about it. I think the best move I did was probably, what was it, 2017, 2018. I was working for a small startup, and this is when content kind of evolved. So it's starting to evolve beyond blogs and white papers and stuff like that into video. Now, video is very expensive. The marketers who are tuning in ever bought down a full crew. Sometimes you're bringing in a makeup artist. It becomes like completely out of control. You need to space the film, equipment. It becomes very, very expensive. Editing is so expensive. So a normal company can really only do 2, 3 videos a year, a quarter. It's very hard to pump it out. But in today's day and age, if you're putting out 5 videos a year, you're so lacking. And I guess, Oliver, this goes to you and Pac, that you guys are doing a great job at putting out videos.
I mean, we don't have the makeup crew. We don't necessarily have quite the studio space. But yeah, it's hard. Videos is expensive and it's hard, like you say.
Although I will say this is after a couple hours, so I don't know about you. I'm kidding. No, so I think one of the biggest projects I did that I'm really proud of is this startup. I think we spent about 10 grand. We bought 2 cameras, 3 mics, a teleprompter, lighting, green screen, a bit of editing software. And we would be able to pump out videos. Were they the best quality? Absolutely not. And here's another tip for marketers. Sometimes underproduced things work better than super, super duper produced.
Yeah.
By the way, this is also true for the email marketers here.
Yeah.
Sometimes just like plain text will convert better than the super flashy,
Oh,
very well.
I've definitely seen that in data. Like, in fact, I'm an exclusive believer in less is more with emails.
Look, I think the big talk of now is that the ad Kanye did for the Super Bowl, where he essentially filmed on his phone, like in the car.
Yeah.
And it did like super well because it threw people off, because it seemed very authentic.
Yeah.
So I built out a studio, and our videos went really from 2 or 3 a year to probably 40, 50 a year.
Oh, gosh.
And that's a game changer. Game changer when it comes from a content strategy. And when you have smart people, articulate people, are able to really present well, it's not that complicated. If you have everything in house and you could set up a camera, again, is bringing a studio for 10 grand a day better? 100%. And you'll get a higher quality video. But, again, you have to look at the data. You have to look at your content strategy. And is it worth just doing, very quick options? You'll have to see. And something I'm very happy here at Palo Alto, we have a gigantic film studio with like 3 separate rooms.
Oh, wow.
For me, it's like a kid in a candy
Oh,
shop.
yeah.
Yeah, but look, when you're at a startup, you have to be scrappy and do more with less. I'm sure many of your listeners who've been at startups know that.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm proud of it is it's just, being frugal, understanding the budget, and how can I take those 10 grand instead of using it for one day and one editing day to really stretch it and create a huge quantity of content. Look, at the end of the day, people are looking for the content and not how it's filmed. So yeah, could the audio be better if you hire someone for a ton of money? 100%. People are looking to hear from experts. And you know what? If it's not the best quality of all time, I think that's totally okay. If you're producing and doing, I think it'll drive the leads you're looking for, the exposure you're looking for. So that's a project that I'm very proud that I did.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And I think it sounds like it's one of those things that works really well for smaller startups and works well for, companies just got C capital or Series A. Doing that for a far larger vendor becomes a lot more problematic and challenging from the perspective of brand and credibility and trust, and just knowing you always have to hit a very specific bar. You've got a brand team over here scrutinizing everything you do. But certainly for the vast majority of kind of the marketing folk working at those startups, that's a really encouraging message and a really encouraging story for them to hear.
Yeah, as someone who kind of scrapped at startups and put things together on my own, and like ranking things, and I don't know anything about video editing or building, but a couple of YouTube videos and a couple of blog posts, and then I do it, and then going over to companies like Meta and like Palo Alto Networks who have a full built-in studio, I could just focus on the content. By the way, maybe this goes back to the earlier conversation of what is the role of a marketer and how does it, and a product marketer, and how does it change based on company size? I would argue that, in a startup, you're kind of doing everything and your fingers are in all pots and you're connecting the mics and you're editing the video. In a larger company, I think you're very, very focused on the story, the narrative, the go-to-market strategy, which is nice, at least for me. I was going to say that it's better, but I think both are fun. I enjoy
They're just different. And I think what's interesting is because you've cut your teeth working at startups and then moved to a larger organization, I imagine that's probably informed a lot of the ways in which you approach things. To what extent would you advocate, if you've got an individual working purely only at large vendors, to what extent is it beneficial for them to work at a startup to grow and hone their skills and career?
That's a really interesting question. And I think it would be very much like where they see themselves. There are people who are happy in the larger companies.
Yeah.
And then there are people who just like kind of the, they hate the bureaucracy. They hate, getting approval from legal for every like LinkedIn post you're posting. I think it depends on the personality. If there are people who want to stay their entire life at big companies and stick at a big company, I had a boss who used to tell me that that everyone needs at least one stint at a big company to learn. Look, I learned a ton from being at IBM, from being at Meta, from now being at Palo Alto Networks. So there's so many people. When you go to a company and the team of marketing is 3 people, 5 people, 7, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your teachers are YouTube, are Google, are just like searching and trying to figure it out on your own. There's something fun, at least in my mind, the scrappiness of trying to figure things out. It's almost like a puzzle, I would say.
The example you gave, like, you have a very big problem to solve in terms of how do we create high quality videos to engage with the community. We can't afford this big budget kind of one-off videos, but we can get a couple of cameras, we can get a green screen. Like that kind of innovative, creative problem solving feels like you can only really do that to that level working for kind of a startup where you're joined with about 2, 3 other kind of marketing folk.
Yeah, 100%. So good point. I think the role in a startup is a lot more about figuring things out. How can I do more with less? What would provide the most value? How, because also you're cut very thin, and how do you choose the right thing to focus on? When you're in a bigger company, I think you're a lot more focused on, am I telling the right story? Is this resonating? Because that story that you're crafting, they're investing hundreds, millions of dollars in promoting that story. So how do you know that story is really hitting home? So you have to be super focused and super knowledgeable about the product, about the customers, about the market. So the role, it's funny that we kind of came to the into this, that the role is, I think, somewhat different. I think, by the way, that's still a huge focus of product marketing in a startup as well. You have to make sure the story is right. But I think the focus on execution is somewhat stronger at the startup as opposed to larger companies, which is different.
In terms of, we spoke about before about the importance of being data driven. I'm interested to understand what do you think the most important KPIs and metrics and data points to track are in your role as a product marketing professional?
So, great question. Look, I probably spend an hour a day poking around the different analytics tools, that Salesforce, Marketo, HubSpot, because I learn a lot. As we said, talking to customers, looking them in the eye, but also seeing that behavior. And these goes maybe also, especially to the people who are listening in who are more B2C, who have huge volumes. Understanding that data becomes super important. I'm looking at the entire funnel. What are the stages of the funnel? Where are things convert? The conversions between the different stages. Where are things getting stuck? The people here in PLG, you guys need to be product-led growth. You guys need to be super, super in tune with your data. Where are you losing people along the journey? All those things I think are really, really important. And those product marketers who are dealing with pricing, I think that's a whole different beast. And also you need to be super focused on sales metrics, sales data, discounts, things along those lines, to craft your price. That's right. That's another place that I would focus a lot of my time on, looking at the different type of data sets. But being able to, like, I love to look at like what content, the data that comes from different content pieces is always super curious to me. How many click rates and how many conversions and how many buy. Sometimes you have a piece of content that you have a webinar. A ton of people are attending the webinar, but then no one buys, right? So able, and I feel like a lot of the more creative people tend to like neglect that also, because it's so much far after. But this is maybe a sign.
What's the ROI of organizing for that event on at the end of the day? Nothing is free. Like, organizing a webinar is a time-intensive, resource-intensive process. What is it delivered in terms of value?
No, and maybe this is a sign, Oliver, for your listeners. Right after this, obviously listen to the end, but then go back and look at your webinars, at your white papers. the different types of content that you produced a year ago, 2 years ago, and try to see, look at that funnel. Did it lead to deals?
Mm.
Did it? Why? Did it bring in a ton of leads and none of them converted? And try to like see and just improve yourself. I think marketing is very much a you never get, like, very rarely do you get it right in the first try. You try one thing, you see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you try again and try again and try again until you figure it out.
So it's closing that feedback loop really, and making sure you're always focused and looking at data to inform how you're now going to approach things and how you're going to learn from either what worked and what didn't work. And you're right, most of the time stuff doesn't work, and that's fine. So long as you are learning from that and then using that to innovate and change how you approach things.
Well, I think that, Oliver, that's a really important point, and I'm glad you brought it up. You have to fail. If you haven't failed in the last month, then you're doing something wrong. If you're being so conservative and you're overthinking everything and you're not taking risks and you're not failing, I don't know. It's very hard for me to connect with that type of marketing. I think a good marketer takes huge risks. And you know what? You might have invested a ton of time and effort in a piece of content that's a little out there and it failed miserably, but you tried. I think big success doesn't come of doing the same as everyone else or the same thing that's worked a million times. Try to find that really out of the box idea and just go for it. And you may fail and you should fail. But you know what? You'll fail once, you'll fail twice, you'll fail a third time. The fourth time it may hit and it may be huge. And I think that's super important for a marketer.
Okay.
It's not for like a surgeon, but for a marketer.
No, yeah. I mean, it's low risk on one level. It's maybe a waste of resources, but you've got key learning. I think there's an entrepreneurial angle to what you're talking about there in terms of how good product marketers ought to work, in terms of always looking for new and exciting opportunities that no one else is trying. Otherwise, you're only ever, basically keeping your head above water and just maintaining the status quo.
Yeah. No, definitely trying and failing is super important, and also maybe a kind of tip for your listeners. If you haven't failed in the last 2 months, if you haven't tried something and it just didn't work out, then take bigger risks. Try something new, out of the box. And that's part of the fun, Oliver. That's the honest truth. The coming up with something new. And by the way, there's no worse feeling of putting so much time and effort into something and just it doesn't hit them. You're like, sure, it'll work. You invest so much time and you're up late nights and it just doesn't hit the mark. It just takes everything out of you. And I think that's another skill a marketer needs, is to be able to pick themselves up the next day and say, hey, that didn't work. How am I doing how am I changing and iterating and doing it better the next time? So it's a hard skill. I was telling it, I'm like, oh, this sounds too good. There is definitely a downside to it, and mentally it's hard. But I think failing is a huge part of marketing.
Seeing failing as success is counterintuitive, but ultimately, you don't get the best by getting it right first time. It takes practice, it takes dedication, it takes everything. It's resilience at the end of the day. It's that resilience that really separates the great from the good.
You definitely need a good backbone with and by the way, which is true with sales too, right? Sales, you try and SDRs, right? SDRs are the best at like hearing no. But take a risk, do something a little out of the box, spend some money that you may not have. It may have a great return. That would be my kind of advice to my fellow marketers here.
It's good advice. As we come to close this interview, it's really sad. I want to leave you with one last question, which is, looking towards the future, what trends and significant developments do you think there are in tech and the world of product marketing that are beginning to shape and will have a significant impact on how you do your job in the future?
I just spoke about being creative and out of the box. So I very much regret to say this answer, but I can't not. You know where I'm with this. It's gonna have to be AI, right? And this is something, AI will change the way we do things. I don't think it will solve our problems. And a good analogy that we tend to have is, try to think of an airplane, right? An
Mm.
airplane back in the day had like maybe 2 or 3 buttons and like a steering wheel.
Yeah.
You had one pilot, right? An airplane today has probably 150 buttons. I don't know if anyone looked in a big
It's a
like
lot. Yeah, yeah.
ton of buttons. You have 2 pilots. It's a huge um it's a huge operation. So even though technology got better, it doesn't mean the pilot, like we need less pilots or no pilots. Yes, there's autopilot and it does a lot of things itself, but the pilot then becomes more of the strategist, of the person who kind of maneuvers that gigantic machine. So I think maybe if 30, 40 years ago, our marketers would write a blog or take out an ad in the paper. Today, it's more about how to use all those buttons and all those tools that are around you. So I think the way marketing is going is we have to learn how do we use AI to our advantage.
Yeah.
In a world where I could ask LLMs any question, am I reading blogs in the same level?
Yeah.
Content creation, video creation. We're getting a ton of support from AI. If you're not using AI, it's kind of it's kind of that advantage that everyone can have access to. So if you're not using it, also you may be falling behind. It's going to change the tech industry as a whole. It's going to change marketing for sure. It'll be really cool to see how kind of the whole demand gen and lead gen is affected by AI. But I think when it comes more to our side, is more around the content creation. There will be an element of AI, but at the end of the day, I think maybe, and this would be a good way to sum things up, a product marketer will always be needed to look the customer in the eye and understand what's resonating. And I'm not sure AI will get there, at least in the near future. Being in the market, listening in those events and meeting the customers, listening like kind of during the breaks, what are people talking about? What are they interested in? What are they excited about? That's going to be the core role of a product marketer. But AI will probably take a huge role in just marketing as a whole and technology as a whole.
Yeah, enabling you to do more, with less, principally, playing into really the hands of those working as kind of smaller startups, to be honest, in terms of really being a unicorn that can basically do pretty much everything. Nice. It brings us full circle to that, the importance of staying close to users and doing the things that AI cannot do.
And you look, it's a lot easier to write a blog today than it is back in the day. And by the way, you write a white paper, put it into ChatGPT and turn it into a blog.
Yeah. And
turn it into a couple of social media posts. It's a lot easier. That being said, something interesting maybe about AI, people think a lot about, will AI replace marketers? And I think when you think of an LLM, right, LLM ChatGPT, how does it work? It finds the most common next word or next letter, right? As a marketer, we're looking to do the exact opposite. We're looking for something unique that hasn't been done a million times before. And I think that's something that AI will right? AI always looks for the most common thing to do. Like, what is everyone else doing? I'm looking for the exact opposite. What is everyone not doing? And I can do differently. So I think that might be
that goes back to your earlier point about taking risks, right? And ultimately doing the things that AI would never do, like a real swing for the fences moment.
There you go.
Yeah. Love that. I mean, Yitzy, it's been really, really great talking to you. Thank you so much for how much wisdom and insight you shared about product marketing. I'm going to have to talk to you again because I think there's a lot more to share. But thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.